What's up, people of YouTube? This is Troll here, bringing you guys another video to the channel, and today we're going to be discussing Modern Warfare and what it looks like now from its initial release about 6 months ago. So Modern Warfare has had its ups and its downs, and I want to discuss some of the positive things before I jump into the negative things. And I also want to say, for all the people out there that love Modern Warfare, I'm not trying to bash on your game. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong for feeling the way that you do. Once I get into the negative aspect of the game and kind of pushing my opinion out there. So please don't take it personally towards you or anything like that, because I get that Modern Warfare has sold very, very well, and I'm happy to see Call of Duty thriving. Modern Warfare sold very well, in my opinion, almost entirely based off of the name itself and the fact that it was a modern Call of Duty game. Those two things appealed to me greatly, so I feel like that's a lot of as to why the game is performing the way that it has, and I think that the way that they've done microtransactions has been a huge positive for them. So that being said, let me go ahead and jump into the actual commentary and kind of discuss everything that's going on. The gameplay in the background is also going to be used as an example to how frustrating this game is, and why I don't think that it's very good. And then again, at the very end of this video, I'm going to say my overall opinion of Modern Warfare and where it ranks for me as of now with all of the other Call of Duty titles. So the first thing I want to do, again, is talk about the positives. I think that the campaign was magnificent. I think that visually it looked great. The story was good. Could have been a little bit longer, but that's okay. And the campaign, I think they knocked that out of the park, and it was great. Good storytelling, all of that. Huge fan of the campaign. The engine that they have made for this game, they revamped everything. I think that's good. I think that is a great building block for what's to come in Call of Duty. I have no issues with the engine itself. I think that that is a good decision on their end. The gun mechanics and customization, microtransactions, DLC, I think all of that is pretty much perfect as well. There could be a little bit of tuning when it comes to the way that some of the microtransactions work, which I talked about in another video, and the gun mechanics and stuff I think are pretty much spot on. Maybe some tuning with the attachments, but I don't really ever want to see that leave Call of Duty. I think that is a great addition to the game. And then this is a double-edged sword, but I really like crossplay. I like the fact that they enabled that for this game, and I don't think that's going anywhere. I think we're going to see that down the line for probably ever, but there are some negatives that come with crossplay, which I will bring up in the negative part of this video. So all of those things together are very, very good in my opinion. And if you guys watch my streams, you'll know that I have criticized Modern Warfare for having extremely high highs. So if I'm doing good in a match, it does feel satisfying, and the good things about the game, like the gun customization and the mechanics, all that stuff, and the engine, it feels fantastic, very, very high. But the lows are extremely low, and after 6 months of playing the game, I think I can confidently say they are the lowest of the low when it comes to any Call of Duty, in my personal opinion. That's above Ghosts, or technically below. That's below Call of Duty Ghosts, and that's below Infinite Warfare, which are my two other most despised Call of Duty games in the franchise. I feel like I'm getting punished for no reason way more than I did in those games. And I'm going to go ahead and transition over to the negative aspect of Modern Warfare. When it comes to the maps, I think these are probably my #1 complaint when it comes to Modern Warfare. The maps in this game are so bad. They definitely developed these maps to cater for bad players, because they wanted to, and I think that this was, again, something that Activision had a part in. I don't know how to explain this to where it doesn't sound crazy, but they want to keep people playing as much as possible. And if you have balanced, well-designed maps that cater to people who are good at memorizing that stuff and knowing spawn points and all of that, the people who are good at the game are going to destroy the people who are not good at the game all of the time. And most of the people who play Call of Duty, because it is such a casual game, are not going to be above average or top tier players. So that means that they want people, the majority of the people who are playing the game, to stick around as long as possible. The only way that they're going to be able to do that is to cater to people who are not as good at the game. That's going to result in more camping spots. It's going to result in more situations where they're not getting just absolutely annihilated, not having to learn to be better players. From a business perspective, I completely understand why they would develop things like that. And that's what they have done with the maps and the spawns, which I'll get into in a moment. But The maps themselves, there's absolutely no reason as to why, from the standpoint of just a regular video game that is made to have fun and for people to go from being bad to being good and not worrying about retaining players for as long as possible, etc. There is absolutely no reason why maps should have random rooms and buildings that disrupt the flow of the map, windows that overlook every possible angle that you could imagine to where you can't keep up with where people could potentially be seeing you from, and doors everywhere. I like the door mechanic. I think the door mechanic was a good idea, and it should stay in Call of Duty to an extent, but you don't need to have doors on every single room. You don't need to remake maps, DLC content maps, put them in the game, and add doors and rooms that didn't need to be there before. They did open up some areas on some of the DLC maps for some spawn locations that I think was good, but for the most part, there was no need to add all of that. It is atrocious. Now, let's talk about spawns. I think that the spawns on the map are bad for two reasons. One, I think it's a new engine, and I think that has something to do with it. And two, I think that the spawns are bad because they want them to be bad. I think that they want sporadic, crazy spawns, and the spawns are bad in two ways. One, the spawns don't flip like they're supposed to. There's no, when a team is pushing one side, whether that's TDM, domination, whatever, the spawns are supposed to flip once they get too far into that spawn point. And that is just not happening in Modern Warfare. And I don't know why they would want that to be a thing, but bad spawns in general, again, they reward bad players. If somebody is pushing into a spawn, if a team has control of the map, what very little map control you can actually have in this game, and the spawn is pushed back in, where normally in every other Call of Duty game to this point, it would flip to where they're not just constantly getting destroyed. Now it's rewarding those players who are not good at the game because they can just constantly kill somebody and know that they're going to spawn right there next to them and not have to move, not have to think about it. They're going to get that cheap, free, easy kill, and it's going to stimulate them to want to come back and play the game more. What does that do to people who are good at the game? People who know that they have better gun skill, better map awareness, and better knowledge of the game? That's going to frustrate them and not make them want to play. But that's okay, because those highly skilled players, aside from pros who are obviously being paid to play the game because it's their job, those players aren't needed. They're not needed in the community because they're such a minority in comparison to the overall abundance of casual players. And I think that the overall abundance of casual players, the people who are probably listening to me and disliking this video right now, are the ones who are going to stand there and say, Modern Warfare is the best Call of Duty we've had in years. I agree with that to an extent. The reasons I hate this game are so much different than the reasons I disliked other games, which, again, I will get into that later on in the video. This is the slowest Call of Duty game we've had in a long time, and it makes no sense for me to die on one spot on these ginormous maps with all of these buildings and rooms and doors and windows, and then to respawn within 5 feet of where I just died just to get killed again by the same person, and then have that happen sometimes 2 to 3 times in a row, and their team doesn't even have a spawn trap built. It's just that it just spawns you there. It just happens to be like that. You know, I have a little bit more leniency to the older Call of Duty games when you had a team of people who knew how to spawn trap. I feel like there's more involved with that, more skill, again, something that obviously Activision doesn't like, more skill involved with spawn trapping people than there is just random spawns or spawns that won't flip that kind of creates a spawn trap by default. I just don't understand it, and I never will fully understand why that they went that way, aside from player retention and, of course, the end goal, which is money. Now let's talk about time to kill a little bit here. Time to kill in Modern Warfare isn't the worst that it's ever been. I felt like Call of Duty Ghosts was more melty, and Infinite Warfare was, I think Infinite Warfare was a little bit worse than this in terms of time to kill. But this game does feel very, very melty because of the headshot multiplier, which I don't think has a place in Call of Duty. I used to disagree with that, and it did make getting headshots in this game a lot easier for camo challenges, but I don't think that there's a place for a headshot multiplier. Again, it caters to bad players because you shoot at somebody who isn't very skilled. It's going to cause their weapon to jump up. It's going to hit you in the head. You're going to die before they die, even though you outgunned them. It just caters to bad players and higher player retention. so on and so forth. I don't think there's a place for it to be in the game, and I think that causes the time to kill to feel so much faster than what it really is. If there was not a headshot multiplier, I think that the time to kill would feel pretty much perfect, if we're being honest, but that's my own personal opinion. The next one on the list is crossplay. So crossplay is, for the most part, very good in my opinion, but my experience with crossplay, now that Warzone has been released and it's kind of spread the player base out a little bit, is when I have it enabled, I find myself playing against PC players the majority of the time, because of course, we all know at this point, since Drifter and Exclusive Ace have done their testing, there is a form of skill-based matchmaking in the game. And I don't have the best stats in the world. I have above average stats. Going for Damascus kind of destroyed my stats, but for the most part, I have pretty solid stats in Modern Warfare, and because of that, I get paired with above average to slightly better players. Nothing crazy. I'm not saying like I'm a god at Call of Duty, because I'm not, but better players than most. And because of that, I'm getting paired against people who are using mouse and keyboard, and that is a miserable experience because they're completely two different playing fields. You know what I mean? Like if I was good at mouse and keyboard, then that would be one thing, but I'm using a controller. There is a much more limited range of motion. Yes, we have aim assist. Because we have such a limited range of motion, we can't be as steady and versatile with a mouse being able to swipe across the entire screen as fast as possible, as well as mouse and keyboard players having FOV sliders to see more of the map, more of the game at any given time. So I think because of that, I don't want to play against PC players. Now I will say this, there's been a lot of times where I've played against PC players that they weren't good. They were average or just normal, and they weren't really competing against controller players in the same way that I expected them to. But one in every probably 5 of those mouse and keyboard players were absolute gods, and there was almost never a way for me to beat them. I was getting destroyed every single time, and it almost feels like legit hacks. It's crazy, and I think that there should be a way to enable whether or not you want to play with mouse and keyboard players or you just want to play with controller players on Xbox and PlayStation. I think that should be something that's implemented with crossplay, but that's just me. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about here is skill-based matchmaking. Again, skill-based matchmaking is another thing that they've used to try to enhance the player retention, make it higher, because bad players are going to be paired with bad players, and they're not going to feel as threatened when they play the game. They're not going to get destroyed as much as if it was just random lobbies where it's based off of connection. Now, I do think that they do primarily base it off of connection, so don't get me wrong here, but within that range of connection, I think that they then pair you with the best players that match your skill level in some sort of a combination between KD, score per minute, and probably win-loss ratio. I don't agree with that. I think that's also why a lot of the time, if you back out of a lobby before the game starts and then you wait a couple of seconds, you go back in, you get paired with the same people again. It used to not be like that. It didn't start doing that till about Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, somewhere in there, which is where everybody started complaining about skill-based matchmaking. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that that happens so consistently now. Making this video is like talking into a brick wall, because I understand that nothing that I say is going to change it. I just wanted to express my feelings. But skill-based matchmaking defeats the whole point of getting good at Call of Duty. I remember the days in Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops 1, somewhere in there when I was not very good at Call of Duty and I was just starting to learn how to play. And I remember being shit on all the time and seeing these players, or even playing with people who are way better than me, and knowing that I wanted to be that good. And I kept grinding and playing and playing. Even when people that I played with stopped playing and stopped caring about the game, I kept playing and grinding and really honing that craft. Come Black Ops 2, and even Ghost to an extent, and then going into like Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, those games were my butter. Like I was very, very good at those games, and I never really felt the skill-based matchmaking in Advanced Warfare. I didn't really feel it in Black Ops 3. I don't really think it was a thing in Black Ops 3, if we're being honest. But after that, I did start to notice, especially with this game, that there is something there that does not add up. It doesn't make sense. And there's definitely some form of skill-based matchmaking there. We all know that at this point. But it defeats the purpose of getting really good at Call of Duty, and it never feels like I'm accomplishing anything. You know, I used to play Call of Duty to relax, listen to a podcast, just record some gameplay for videos, work on camo challenges. And now when I do that, I can't just relax and do it, because the skill that I have developed over the years, you don't get to utilize that, because you're always playing against people who are equally as skilled as you or better, which causes you to have to sweat nonstop. Like, I'm busting out the Astro controller with the highest cranked settings on my Astros, and then drinking G Fuel on the side, just being fucking insane and trying to do as good as I possibly can just to end up with a positive KD. It's absolutely absurd, and it's one of the things that if it does happen, this will drive me away from Call of Duty forever. If it continues to be implemented the way that it is, there's no place for it to be in the game, and I absolutely hate it. So that is pretty much all of the negatives about this game. I do want to close out this video by discussing where I place Modern Warfare in line with all of the other Call of Duty games and why. Pretty much in all, I think that this game has been plagued with issues, from maps to spawns as well as skill-based matchmaking. Those three things right there, I think, are the biggest issue within all of Modern Warfare, and the reasons why I do not enjoy it really at all. You know, the guns and all that stuff only goes so far. If I can't enjoy using them in an actual match, then it really doesn't matter. So Modern Warfare, to me, I can officially say as of now, after getting Damascus and playing the game for 6 months, I have almost 9 days played. Modern Warfare is my most hated Call of Duty game that's ever been released. For different reasons than Call of Duty Ghosts and Infinite Warfare, though. I do want to acknowledge that. I feel like there were certain things about the other Call of Duty games that stood out as being so bad that I didn't like it as a whole, whereas this game checks 3 of those things off the list as being the worst we've ever experienced. It has the worst spawns that have ever been in a Call of Duty game, without a doubt. It's got the worst maps that have ever been in a Call of Duty game, without a doubt. And it's got the strongest skill-based matchmaking, or matchmaking in general, that we've ever seen, which causes things to be miserable. If I go back to Infinite Warfare, I didn't like the theme of it. I didn't like the way that it felt a lot of the times, and the weird, gimmicky, cheap weapons that you could use. The time to kill was not my favorite thing, and the maps weren't the greatest. But none of those things were downright horrible. They weren't like complete abominations in terms of like overall Call of Duty and first-person shooters. When I look at Call of Duty Ghosts, I didn't like the time to kill and the way that connections worked. Lots of weird little bugs and stuff, like the S&D plant thing, because I was really big into competitive at that time. That was crippling. It didn't have the best spawns on some of the maps, and for the most part, the maps were not the best, and they were too big. But again, it wasn't the worst thing out of all of the maps in Call of Duty history. Even the best maps from Modern Warfare 2019, the best maps in that game are still some of the worst maps that have ever been made. It is truly mind-blowing how bad Modern Warfare is on a multiplayer standpoint, in terms of just straight-up gameplay perspective from the maps and spawns, etc. And it really makes me question, how can a developing team, Infinity Ward, how can you be making games for as long as you have and continue to release one of the worst games that I've ever played in my entire life? That is the end of this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. To the people who don't agree with me, that is fine. I would love to know your reasoning down in the comment section. But that being said, deuces.